We're here today with Professor Hillel Steiner to talk about his recent paper in the Review of Social Economy, Asymmetric Information, Libertarianism, and Fraud. Hillel, could you please tell me a little bit about the main argument of the article and also what prompted you to write this piece?
Okay, so let me answer the second part of that first, because it more or less sets out the framework of what the article's about. And the way I first got interested in this was when I had to write, nearly 50 years ago, had to write a long review of Nozick's Anarchy, State, and Utopia for the philosophy journal Mind. And I noticed there that he had this list of the kinds of things that count as offenses against basic libertarian rights, and of course he was murder and assault and theft, but he also listed fraud. And I remember thinking at the time that I wasn't quite sure about fraud, because like most people, I have the view that libertarianism is a strong caveat emptor sort of set of principles. So I couldn't see how fraud necessarily counted as a violation of libertarian rights. And I didn't think much about it at the time. And basically it was at the prompting of you and the workshop that you ran on exploitation that got me to think again about fraud. But basically, I argue in the paper that, as you correctly argue, that libertarian basic principles do not support a no fraud duty, what I call a duty of disclosure. And it seems to me obvious that they don't, because basic principle of libertarianism, self-ownership, doesn't require anybody to render any kind of service to anyone else unless they contract to do so. And as I see a no fraud requirement, a disclosure duty, it's a service of providing information, true information. So I couldn't see how basic libertarian principles would support such a duty unless it was a contractual one. That said, what I then argue in my paper is, and this is against James Childs, who said more radically, I guess, that not only does libertarianism not support, not entail a no fraud duty, but it actually prevents a no fraud duty. I think he calls it a hard-nosed caveat emptor theory. I think that's wrong. I think that libertarianism will support a no fraud requirement of disclosure duty if someone has contracted to disclose, to tell the truth, to provide true information. And I think that what we call a warranty is that kind of contract, basically. Sets up that kind of contractual relationship between a buyer and a seller, whereby the seller is, by giving a warranty, is undertaking contractually to provide a piece of true information to the buyer. And of course, contractual fidelity is a fundamental principle of libertarianism.
So I want to go back to a little bit of the first part of what you were talking about with the idea that libertarianism doesn't entail a prohibition on fraud necessarily. So James Childs kind of originally was the first one to kind of challenge this idea in print, and I've also challenged it myself. But you agree with our conclusions here, but you reach this conclusion via a shorter path, I have to say, than Child and I do, because your argument seems to be that since disclosing information is a service, that is a kind of a positive action. or a positive thing. Libertarian principles only concern negative duties. There can be no duty to disclose this information. So Child and I are more exhaustive about looking at all the libertarian principles and seeing if they entail it. And you just take this kind of negative liberty angle to arrive there very quickly. But is it true that libertarian principles never entail positive duties? I mean, what about duties to rectify prior rights violations, for example?
Yeah.
And in that case, could libertarians get at fraud via that route?
Yeah, no, you're right. And it would be wrong to say, and I would have been wrong to say, or what I'm wrong to say, never entail positive duties. It does entail positive duties in the presence of a contract. Most contracts are ones for some positive performance. There can be, I guess there can be contracts that impose negative duties on people. Not to, you could have a contract that someone will, I don't know, will not do something that they're normally allowed to do. Sort of park their car in front of your house, which they would normally be allowed to do if it's a public road. You could take out a contract with someone not to do that, and libertarians would say that, you know, that it's a contract that imposes a negative duty. But most contracts do, in fact, impose positive duties of rendering some service, delivering some good of some kind. And libertarians are very strong on contracts and on fidelity to one's duties. So libertarianism does certainly underwrite those kinds of positive duties, and also the ones that you mentioned, the ones whereby if you violated some right of someone, either a basic libertarian right or a contractually created right, then you owe compensation, and paying compensation is a positive duty, which again, libertarians amply support.
Okay, interesting. So that's a good way to kind of clarify that distinction. But the idea would be that these, at least in the rectificatory case, these positive duties would still follow from violations of negative rights.
Violations of negative ones and contractual positive duties. Yeah.
Right.
Those are the two types of positive duty that libertarian principles support. Yeah.
Right. So your suggestion is that fraud can be handled not by libertarian principles necessarily, but via warranty. That is a contractual promise that certain facts are as the transactor represents them. Now, as you know, I've been concerned that the solution is could be subject to a regress. Because the idea is that although a party promises to tell the truth about the properties of the good being exchanged in the contract, they might lie here too. I mean, they might lie when they're creating the contract. So although they say they'll tell the truth, they aren't really planning to tell the truth. So why doesn't the regress go through? Or am I conflating promises and truth telling here? I think that may be part of it.
See, I think this may sound a little pedantic and narrowly semantic, but I don't think that saying that you will do something and then not doing it is lying. I will tell the truth, even though I had no intention to tell the truth, is not the same as lying. It's the not. Yeah, you'd be lying if you said, I have an intention to tell the truth, when you knew that you didn't. But I don't think that, well, what I've said. So I don't think there's a regress, because I think a warranty is a contract that creates the duty to tell the truth. And if you then don't tell the truth, if what you're saying about the object that you're warrantying as a seller is untrue, then you have clearly violated that contract. the truth-telling contract, not the contract of sale per se, but the truth-telling contract.
So, what here, if any, avenues do you think your paper opens up for future research?
Okay, so, and these are suggestions of mine based on complete ignorance. It may be that the kinds of research that it seemed to me would be interesting have long ago been done extensively. But one thing that occurred to me is just empirical research on what exactly counts as a warranty. And this would be research that would certainly have to involve someone with legal competence, clearly, and as well as economists and philosophers too, conceivably. And moving on from that, how extensive, that is to say, what proportion of all transactions are ones where the object sold carries a warranty? Now, that obviously is going to vary, or presumably whatever figure you get for that, what the proportional figure is going to vary with what counts as a warranty, with the conceptual issue. So that I think would be interesting, just to know to what extent things are warranties. You know, if I go into a supermarket and buy a plastic spoon and I just take it to the cash register, nothing that the checkout person is doing counts as a warranty. There's no marking on the spoon that counts as a warranty. I'm buying something without a warranty. If I ask the person at the cash register, is this a spoon that will, be sufficiently durable that it won't crumble before I get home with it? And she says, yes, that counts as a warranty, I said. If she says, I don't know, and I then go ahead and buy it anyhow, then I'm gambling. At least from a libertarian point of view, I'm gambling. Maybe from many people's points of view, I'd be gambling. But typically, of course, we don't ask the checkout person or anyone else whether the spoon is going to make it all the way to my house before it crumbles. So we are gambling, I think.